George Metropoulos. Welcome to our shop, and I'm here with the Plexes, Metro and Super. And since we released the Super-Plex earlier this year, we now have 2 amplifiers in our lineup. That means that everyone who's interested in one of our amps says, well, how do they compare and which one's for me? So hopefully I can help answer some of that right now. The Metro-Plex has been around for about 2 years. And the catalyst for this amp was my 1968 Super Lead. So that's a 100-watt plexi with EL34 output tubes. And I like that amp with one particular slant 412 basket weave cab from 1967. And that cabinet has a very kind of a vocal, kind of forward mid-range. And so those tonal qualities are built into the Metro-Plex, and that is the amp that I referenced while designing it. Super-Plex, on the other hand, originally became a concept when Owen Barry said, can I put KT66 output tubes in my Metro-Plex? And you can, with a few caveats, and ideally you would change the output transformer for the correct impedance. And so we tried that, and it didn't take long to realize that there was a lot more potential there than just a Metro-Plex with KT66s. And so I started referencing my original 45100 Marshall to a couple of prototypes, and then a little while later a JTM 45 block end. So a 45 and a 45100 from 1966, and those have GEC KT66 output tubes. In general, the Metro-Plex is going to be brighter, more aggressive, definitely more saturation, and the Super-Plex is going to be cleaner, more organic, and has that sort of KT66 chime, and always a lot of low end. So when I'm playing my 45100, you can turn the bass all the way down, and the low end, the bass frequencies, they're always kind of on the verge of too much, even with the bass control turned off. And that holds true in the Super-Plex also, except for the fact that you've got a lot more range in the EQ control to dial some of the lows out and kind of clean that up. The amps feel a lot different to play. The Super-Plex kind of feels like an early plexi, or a kind of the biggest, angriest tweed kind of bassman you ever want to play. You definitely hear that lineage in this amp, and the Metro-Plex is just aggressive, as you'll hear. So for the sake of comparisons, what I've done is both amps have the gain knob pulled out, so they're in the lower gain setting, where the Super-Plex has 2 modes, I guess you could say. It has a cleaner mode and a dirtier mode. The clean mode is based on my JTM 45, so it's kind of clean and, you know, edge of breakup at 5, and then it gets dirty as you dial up. Where the Metro-Plex 66 mode is going to be the cleanest of the 3, and then you've got 68, which is just like the old Super Lead, and mod is if you took that 68 Super Lead and put some mods and tweaks in there to make it dirtier. So we've got the cleaner mode on both amps. All the EQs are on 5, and master on the Metro-Plex is 2, master on the Super-Plex is 3. Because the gain staging is different, the master comes on a little later on the Super-Plex. So to make them equal, I just had to adjust the masters. Using the headmaster, and when the green LED is on, that's going to be the Super-Plex, and the red LED is going to correspond to the Metro. Okay, so Super-Plex, everything on 5, cleaner of the modes, and it definitely edge of breakup. You can certainly hear the tweed influence in there. Organic, early plexi sounding. Metro-Plex. So a few things. Even with the gain on 5 and 66, already kind of dirty, chunky rhythm tones. It's breaking up, and there's a lot of mid-range, very mid-forward. Where the Super-Plex is more scooped in the mids, it has an audio taper mid pot, so the mids come on much later in the rotation. The Metro-Plex has a linear mid pot and more middle frequencies on tap than a typical Super Lead or Vintage Marshall. So you have a lot more control. There's a huge range. So this 66, to me, this is classic rock, dirty rhythm tone. You know, this is like... And the Super-Plex on 5, it's just not quite there yet. You've got to, just like on my JTM 45, you got to get up around 7 or 8 to get it breaking up and get that same sort of level of dirt. So you can see now I've got the gain up on 8.5 or so, and you start to get to about the same level gain-wise. But the voicing, the frequency response is really strikingly different. So we can get them closer if we roll some mids out and push some bass up on the Metroplex. So yeah, you can dial them closer, but to me, the Metroplex always keeps that spanky upper mid-range super lead thing going on, and the Super-Plex always stays kind of thick and sludgy. And so one quick note about the 66 mode on the Metroplex. When I first started building this amp, it only had the 68 mode and the mod mode, and people were sending them back to be modded for less gain, and so I put an extra mode in here. We have 3 modes now, and I called it 66 because the level of gain from that mode was what I considered on par with like the 66 era JTM 45 and stuff. Really, if we're going to be more accurate tonally, I think 67 era super bass would be closer to what this really sounds like, and that would be with EL 34s, so it's just technically a little more accurate. But anyways, for sake of conversation here, that was 66. So now if we go to 68 mode on the Metroplex and go to my favorite settings, which is about 6.5 or 7 on the gain, mids cut back just a bit, maybe to 4. Bass kind of depends on which cabinet we're using. But this is going to be your iconic kind of classic super lead overdrive. This should be instantly familiar. That's just great, dirty, British rock tone to me. Okay, so if we want to get into that territory with a Super-Plex, now we need to go into the dirtier mode. And the gain is still up around 8.5 or 9. And it will get about the same level of gain, but it's a very much a different flavor, and it feels a lot different under my fingers too. So definitely a different tonal flavor, very thick, both about the same gain levels overall, but different animals really. And just like on the Metroplex, the range of mids available in the middle control is pretty drastic. So. You can probably hear by comparison the middle frequencies on the Super-Plex are centered a little higher, and it's a much more broad sort of range of frequencies. It's a little more focused, a little not as broad, and focused right around 800 hertz, right in the real vocal area on the Metroplex. Okay, so the Metroplex has the third mode, and this is going to be mod mode, which alludes to modding an original super lead. This is kind of my take on the kind of mod you might have done in the late 70s or through the 80s. And it's really about as aggressive as a super lead circuit gets without adding more gain stages or anything. So. So that's mod, and this is 68. And this is and if you scoop the mids out, you can get downright metal on this thing. Okay, back to 68 mode. So you may have noticed, but the middle control to me is really the whole key to voicing on this entire Metroplex design. The overall response of the amp, as far as being centered in guitar frequencies, are all right in this control. Up to 5 now. Now 8. And dimed. Really start getting into some kind of voxy type tones. So that. Okay, so that is the sort of the modes compared on these two. There was a question recently about how the cleans on the Metroplex compared to cleans on the Super-Plex. If I'm being honest, the Super-Plex does clean tones much more just inherently. It's just naturally more of a clean sort of voiced amp. But let's see how close we can get with the Metro. This is the Super-Plex. Very iconic plexi sounding clean tones. Let's go to Metroplex and get the gain down. It's on only 2 right now. Still has a distinctly chimey kind of a bite. It's got the iconic super lead voicing thing happening. It never really goes out. Might be able to get a little closer with the low input jack. So there are cleans in the Metroplex, but they just don't come as effortlessly, in my opinion. So if you're looking for a predominantly clean amp, for my money, that's going to be the Super-Plex. Or if you want to get all your dirt from pedals, you know, you do the pedal platform thing. That to me is more Super-Plex, but they both work and they both take pedals great. Okay, so common to both amps is a built-in boost circuit that has its own gain control and its own master volume. So on both amps, if you turn the boost gain all the way down and activate the boost, then what you effectively have is a switchable master volume. So you can change volume levels and not change your tone. If you want to add more saturation, you just dial up the gain control. And although it's exactly the same circuit, the way that the boost hits the front, because it's right before the first preamp tube, it hits the preamp a little differently, and the result is a little different. So let's turn the boost on. Metroplex. Here is 66 mode with the boost on. And now we'll go to 68 mode with the boost on. So one of my favorite tricks with the boost on the Metroplex is once you get the gain up around 8.5 or 9, it effectively becomes like a fuzz pedal, because the signal is going completely square wave into the first preamp tube, so it turns into a fuzz, and if you go to the neck pickup, you get those. So that's a blast. On the Super-Plex, there's our basic dirty tone from the 66, excuse me, from the less gainy mode. So the gain pot is out. And let's turn boost on. And on the Super-Plex, there are mini treble and bass EQ controls for the boost circuit specifically. So if you turn these both all the way down and roll this up, you get like a mid-rangey kind of a boost. To be flat, you need the bass right around like 9 o'clock and the treble right around noon. So no boost. And boost with gain around 8. But my favorite thing to do with this one is gain around 9, treble about 2 or 3 o'clock, bass around 8 or 9 o'clock. And when you set it this way, it hits the amp as though like it was a treble booster, like a 60s treble booster hitting the front end of a 60s, you know, like a Plexi or a British style amp. So it turns into that kind of real hairy treble boosted like. So that's great for all of those kind of Cream and Zeppelin era stuff. You know. Real fuzzy, real bright. It's definitely got all kinds of hair on the tone. I know that track might have been direct fuzz or overdriving an old mic pre or something. I know Paige did that a lot, so if somebody knows, put it in the comments for me, please. So this is a pretty good overview of the kind of where these amps share some tonal common ground and where they definitely go different directions. They're completely different animals, and although they're both thoroughly British in tone and plexy in tone, it's definitely Super-Plex is the early plexis and the you know, like the big hairy tweed kind of a thing, and the Metro-Plex really picks up from about 67, 68 and goes forward from there. So I'm going to make a bunch of more videos because I haven't even touched on the Variac or the half power switch or the switchable loops or anything else yet, or all the design work that went into the master volumes and stuff. So I hope this helped for now, and if you're interested in one of these amps and you want to talk about it some more, just give us a call or shoot us an email, and you can visit us at metropoulos.net. And so thanks a lot.